Hello, possibility seekers. We're back. We have a really cool guest today. Dani Spies is going to talk to us about food, nutrition, diets, and lifestyle. Let me tell you a little bit about our rock star today. Dani is the creator and host of Clean and Delicious, a blog and a YouTube channel that teaches people how to make healthy eating easy, delicious, and doable. She's also the founder of the Don't Diet, an online course and membership that teaches women how to reach their health, wellness, and weight loss goals without the rules and restrictions of traditional dieting. I love Dani. It turns out that I bought her book. You guys will love this story, and didn't realize that she belonged to my gym. Here's her book. How cool is that? Welcome, Dani.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here to chat with you.
It's so much fun. So I've been, everybody looking on YouTube will see that there are a lot of sticky notes on your book, Missy. So I am chock full of, this is what I'm going to make this week, and this is what I'm going to make next week. And so I'm excited to try your recipes, but I'm really excited to hear about how you got started in all of this. How did you become a food blogger and a certified health, wellness, and weight loss coach? How did this come to be?
So it's twofold. I mean, the journey of becoming a coach was really born out of my own desires to stop struggling with food and body, because I really did struggle with my weight when I was younger, and I tried every diet under the sun. So in many ways, I'm just kind of teaching what I wanted to be taught when I was in those years of trying to figure it out. And the food aspect, I always loved food. And many years ago, when I would coach people one-on-one, a lot of people that I worked with were so open to eating better and changing their food habits, but they truly didn't know how to work with sweet potato or an eggplant, or they just didn't know how to handle certain ingredients. So I would go to people's houses one-on-one and I would help them. And then YouTube kind of came about, and my husband was in the entertainment industry, and he was like, why don't we film these and you can put them on YouTube, send them to your clients so you don't have to go house to house to house. And so we did that. And then in the midst of that, YouTube started to become YouTube. And it was like the videos were reaching so many other people. And then the short story is eventually we were like, oh, maybe we can do something with this.
And now you don't have to, you can have a client across the country and it doesn't much matter, does it?
Oh, no.
It's awesome.
Exactly.
So that's where, so you and I have that in common, that you wrote a cookbook. I wrote a book wishing that this was the book that we ourselves had back when we were younger, which is kind of funny, right? I love your cookbook. I love the simplicity of it. I'm a big simple, less is more kind of girl. Can you kind of summarize your approach to food and nutrition, your core principles? When we chatted in preparation for this podcast, you said so many things that resonated with me that I was like, oh, I got to get some of this down.
Yeah, well, I think that for many people in our modern world, that nutrition can easily become very complicated and overwhelming. And so my approach is really just to keep it simple and take it back to the basics. My kind of core statement that I always circle back to is focus on real whole foods as close to their natural state as possible most of the time, right? So if you can get on that playing field, I feel like that is a huge step towards any type of health or wellness goal. And I think often in today's day and age, people try to get too complicated with what they're trying to do with nutrition, and they're overlooking the basic staples of what creates the base of a healthy diet. So I think, just like you said, less is more, and going back to the basics and keeping it simple is the playing field to focus on first and foremost for anybody.
Right. So unpack your core principles for people beyond what you just said. There's layers of your principles, which I really, really liked.
Yeah, well, I think, so first you want to focus on the quality of the food that you're eating. I think that in many ways, when it comes to food, I think we give food too much responsibility in our health and wellness, goals and desires. The truth is that food is delicious, it's nourishing, it's very important, but it's not the whole puzzle, right? And I think learning how to have a healthy relationship with food, how we eat, when we eat, why we're eating what we're eating. Like, I always love to work with my clients. A big conversation we have is like, what is the energy and the intention that is driving your desire to create a healthier relationship with food? Because I've known, working with a lot of women around weight, so often we veil our desire to change our body with health when really what we're trying to do is create a body that then we will decide that we'll like ourselves. Like if and when I get here, then I will finally stop being mean to myself, and then I'll be worthy, and then I'll be nice to myself. And it's a very inside out approach, because really what we need is to meet ourselves with the desire, right? To really show up from a place of self-care. I always say, like, how can you treat yourself like with exquisite care? And when you think like that, health and weight loss become a natural byproduct, right? It's not the driver of the train.
It's so funny that you said that. I can't even begin to tell you. So today, about a half an hour ago, I got together with a friend of mine who used to work for me back in the day when I was in corporate. And she's struggling with some stuff. And I said, look, you've got to put your oxygen mask on first. You'd have to decide that you're going to be happy. And you have to decide how you're going to show up. And then everything else aligns from there. It's a reverse engineer. You can't be like, if I get into a size 4 jean and my hair is perfect and I've got great highlights and then I'll be happy. No, you're happy. And then you do whatever you want to do with your jeans and your hair.
It's true, because it's like anything that we're putting over there stays there, right? It's all, I love the thought that, transformation or any type of change is a decision, not a destination, right? It's not something that lives outside of us. It's always available in the next moment, and it's always available here. And so when we always put it over there, it's always over there.
And it stays over there.
And it stays over there. Yeah, exactly.
That's a great soundbite. For those of you who didn't catch it the first time, we're going to repeat it for you.
Any type of change or transformation is a decision, not a destination.
Love it. Love it. That is a great soundbite. And so how do your clients respond to you when you say something like that? I'll tell you what response I get when I say you have to decide to be happy. You have to decide that you want to, do whatever. And they kind of look at me like,
well, honestly, most of the women that I work with, they've spent so many years doing and trying all of the things. They're really open to a different perspective, right? So I will say our community, it's really women who they're ready to step back and to stop trying to get somewhere, if you will, and to really look at a bigger perspective of what they're trying to do, why they're trying to do it, and what it really looks like to take care of yourself versus trying to change yourself so that then you will like yourself.
Oh, that is so powerful, Dani. That is so powerful. And now, so it lands for them because they've kind of like tried everything else and it's not working.
And they know. And it's just like when we chat here, right? Like sometimes you just hear certain words and they resonate and there's truth to it. You just have to start practicing tools, on a day-to-day. And it's the opposite of what a lot of like the industry, right? Like the diet industry is teaching. It's not fast. It's not quick. It's not sexy, right? It is intentional. It takes awareness. It takes time. It takes patience. But it's all work worth doing, because that is truly how things change and how we like learn to really, truly, I think, have a sense of like self-worth and value and understanding that what we're looking for, again, lives in the present moment and not in some external or extrinsic notion.
Yeah, that's funny, because I was going to segue on to my next question, which was like, I love what you said about there's no quick fixes, there's no easy buttons. The use of simplicity and common sense was what struck me when we were talking. I wanted you to kind of elaborate and unpack the whole common sense simplicity thing for people, because your approach is really that.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, in today's modern day with like health and wellness nutrition, that we've kind of become like a world, like we're very meta, we're very in our mind. We have a lot of information, we have a lot of words, we have a lot of thoughts, we have a lot of modalities, right? And it all lives in our brain, but we're not dropping down into the rest of our body to be a part of the journey, right? We're trying to think our way towards change or health or wellness rather than feel our way and be in that. Like everybody know, like I always think, you can logically or sensibly, I guess you could say, one knows that, a salad is going to be a more nutritious option than a plate of cheese and bacon. But we live in a world where you can get information, and it's like there's like this real like trickery where people really pause and go, oh, I think the bacon and the cheese because it doesn't have any carbs, right? Like these crazy notions that, and I don't fault anybody because it gets confusing. People get overwhelmed. And I think we pull away from trusting ourselves. And again, just common sense. It doesn't have to be complicated. And, we spoke about this a little. I think sometimes what happens is that when you just stick to the basics and you practice consistency with the simple basics, it doesn't mean that it's easy. And oftentimes, when we come up against the obstacles, when we come into the hard moments, our brain will offer us drama, distractions, excuses to pull us away from the discomfort of doing the thing that has to be done. That is simple, but not easy, and it gives you a reason to quit or break, and then you're like, maybe I'll try this instead, or maybe I'll do that instead. It's like when we get to the bumpy places, right exactly where the invitation to do the work begins, our brain will throw us anything it can to get us to just do what we did yesterday. And without that conscious awareness, it's just very easy to take the bait, and then the next thing you know, you're confused and you can't figure it out.
That's really funny. I always say that. I literally, that's one of the things I love when you said it was because one of my go-to lines is life is simple. It's not easy, but it is simple if you allow it to be. And the micro decisions you make today will dictate the life you have tomorrow. So you put that eggs and bacon in your mouth. Well, tomorrow, the next day, the next year, you might show up with a health problem. Is there such a thing as cause and effect? No, I don't want to take responsibility for that. It's so much more fun to be confused. Another word I don't allow in my house. Um, so share your perspective on why diets don't work.
Well, I think diets don't work simply because what happens is again, we take this external here's the thing. It's not that any diet can work, right? I mean, any dietary approach can work. There's no question about that. But the reason why diets in general are not working is because we look at them like this strict set of rules that we have to take and apply to our life in spite of ourselves, right? And so what I'm always saying is like any dietary approach can provide fantastic guidelines, but you can't leave yourself out of the equation. You can't leave your preferences, your culture, your family, your lifestyle. Like you have to truly be honest with yourself and saying, how do I want to do this? How can I do this? What am I ready to do? What am I willing to do? And then use that guideline in a way that starts to pull you forward instead of feeling like you've got to fit like a square peg into a round hole and force this thing to work. And I think what happens is when people start to use diets in that mindset and they fail, and instead of saying, what could I have done to make that work better for me, they make themselves wrong. And then they start a downward spiral of a false belief that I'm not capable, I'm not able, there's something wrong with me. And that's just not ever true.
Yeah. And that's the $3 billion industry we live in, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then they have to go to therapy to undo the damage that they've done to themselves psychologically from the failures. That's terrible. It's really is such a vicious cycle. So let's talk about belief systems and how that plays into the success at living and eating healthfully, because that was something that you touched upon at coffee. And I thought, wow, that is so interesting.
Yeah. I mean, belief systems, I think, are huge because it's like the way you think about anything, right, is going to affect what you do and or do not do, right? It's going to affect how you feel. It's going to affect what you think about yourself. And so, again, so much of this is going to come back down to having an innate sense of self-worth, because this is what I see with women in food all the time. It's this inside out idea that there's something wrong with me, maybe because I have some extra weight or extra fat on my body. And if I change myself, AKA get to a certain number on the scale, then I will be worthy. And I always say that is the opposite of self-care. It's actually self-abuse, right? When you are trying to change yourself because the thought process in the current moment is I'm not okay, you will take on self-punishing behaviors to try to get yourself there. And so you will approach eating well or exercise or anything that is, could be a self-care tactic with a sense of disdain because it feels like something that you have to do because there's something wrong with you and you're not going to be okay until you get there, right? And so we have to start with that belief system of hey, separating our value and our worth from some fat on our body if we're talking about weight loss, right? and to be able to just say, this is something that I want to do, and this is something that I want to change. I mean, if you think about what any human being is, if you think of your identity, it's really just actions that somebody takes, right? Like, so if you see somebody and you admire them, it's a businesswoman or an athlete, right? It's not that they have something you don't have, they're just taking actions. And those actions are also available to you, right? So when we can drop the stories, and I think that's what happens, we build these negative stories in our mind that block us from, again, the simplicity of taking actions consistency over a long period of time. That creates the change. But what I see again, and this ties into what you're asking about belief systems, is that it has to be fueled with a sense of self-love and self-worth and self-respect versus self-loathing. That's where I see, and I always say it's like the energy and the intention that goes into your action is what's going to determine your result.
So I think we were separated birth at some point in time, not sure how, but because I literally sign all my books, as you now know, anything is possible with intention, planning, and action. And action is in capital letters with an exclamation mark. It's like you can't think your way out of a healthy, like you can't think your way out of anything. Like you got to do it.
You can't, but the thing is, for people who struggle, it's not lack of action. It's the fuel that goes into the action that makes you feel like you're spinning all the time and you can't make progress. Like I always say, people aren't inherently lazy and not trying. It's that they're coming at it and they're working. They're trying to get somewhere by working against themselves, and we have to fuel, right, like where we're trying to go with a more, I think, like gentle, loving, supportive energy. Not I'm going to be X, Y, and Z when I get there. So it's always like it's never the thing. It's like we were talking about dietary approaches. Like you can say this is, counting calories is good, counting calories is bad. Being keto is good, being keto is bad. Being vegetarian is good, being vegetarian. To me, it's not that any of them are good or bad. It's when people do something sustainably and successfully, it's because they like it and they're excited about it, right? So if you're trying something and you're like not feeling good about the process, you've got to inquire within. You can't just keep forcing yourself and to be like, this, just do the action. No, you gotta say like, okay, how do I need to do the action? And you really have to I feel like that's what people leave out of the equation themselves.
Yeah, it's funny because like you can't, I found even for myself, you can't have identity around a methodology or a way of eating or being healthful. Like for instance, I tried being a vegetarian. It doesn't work for me. It didn't make me happy. It didn't give me joy. And my protein levels weren't high enough. So I started suffering. So as soon as my health suffers, I'm like, I'm out. It's not working for me. I tried it. Philosophically, it sounded like a good idea. I like it because of this, that, and the other thing, but my body clearly doesn't like it. So I got to do what's right for me.
But that's a great example of the difference between, right, being in your head and being in your body, right? It's like, you're like, sounds like a good idea. Logically, ethically, whatever your reasons are, but to be able to apply something and then notice, no matter what the thoughts are, it doesn't feel right.
Thank you. Yeah, no, listen, when the protein levels came back, I go to a functional medicine dude, an MD, and he's like, your protein levels have plummeted. I go, okay, we're out. Because the last thing a woman my age, no need to repeat the age, needs is plummeting protein levels. Any woman or any person, you need protein to be able to just keep the muscle mass that you lose over time. So anyway, that was a total message. Like, all right, sounded like a good idea at the time, but not a good idea for you. So that segues onto, young women, social media, body image, like all of the things that Dr. Latimer, my girlfriend, says, compare and despair culture. What is your thought process, or what do you tell young women who are in this space?
I think it's harder when you're young. I don't think there's any question about it. I think because biologically, when you're young, there is a part of like the process that it is about what you look like. And now what I mean is, I'm not saying that you should look a certain way, but I do think just from like an evolutionary standpoint, when you're young and it's kind of like you're in those mating stages and you're looking and it's about attraction. And I think it's harder when you're young because you are thinking about those things, right? And so, I think having awareness that that's a little bit of the culture and that that's what's happening is very powerful. Like, I think there's a lot of power in awareness without action. And what I mean by that is not always thinking you have to fix or change something, but to be able to notice, right? Like, okay, I'm doing this thing, it's creating negative emotion, right? So that you can just kind of, again, let a little bit of the air out of the tire, like pull back on the resistance a little bit. Like, there's probably going to, like, introduce me to a young person that's not going to experience some of that somewhere. It's probably not going to happen. Of course, you can have conversations about like where you're putting your value system, and I think that's really what it really that conversation comes down to. Is it's okay to be, I think, conscious of how you look. I think it's a natural part of that time in life. I really do. But the fine line is not tying up your value in that. That's where it gets slippery.
Are you seeing more and more young women coming to you for coaching and guidance?
Honestly, no. I think I tend, because I focus on not dieting. I think I attract women who have kind of done it all and they're ready to not. So usually when you're young, you're still ready to try it all. So, and here's the thing, when you're trying it all, there are many people who find things that work great for them, right? So it's a very personal path.
Your women are my women. They've tried everything. They're at a happy place, or they're trying to like optimize, not revolutionize. I think that's kind of the way it is. And so do you think social media has, even for older women who are more comfortable in your own skin type people, do you think it's exacerbated the anxiety around health, wellness?
Yes, 100%. And right, I would say yes, that is there and that's real. And there's a level of personal responsibility that needs to take place, right? Where you have got to make a decision to say, I notice this makes me feel like this. I'm not following this. I notice this makes me feel like this. I'm not following this. I think social media can be a very powerful tool. I know, like, my feeds like light me up and turn me on. I follow people that inspire me, that encourage me, that I learn from, that I grow from. And I think that's available to everybody. So I think there's a level of personal responsibility where we have to notice that, hey, this doesn't feel good for me. This is triggering this thought process for me. This is making me have negative emotion. I'm not going to keep staring at this all the time.
Sorry, it just sounded funny the way you just kind of, I'm like, if it's not working, you just do it.
I mean, I know we can get pulled in and we're all human, right? But at the end of the day, I don't feel like you can edit the world, right? You've got to take personal responsibility and make your own boundaries and decisions to take care of yourself.
Exactly. So if Dani were to speak to her 30-year-old self, what would she say to her?
I think you should trust yourself. To just do trust yourself. I mean, I think that would be. I mean, much of what I teach was my own journey, right? Looking outside of myself for answers, not trusting myself, not thinking it had to be a certain way, things of that nature. So I think for my younger self, it would just be like just trust yourself. And just keep following the breadcrumbs.
You know what's really funny about that question? Every time I ask it, it's the only question that is consistent across all my podcasts. I do it on purpose because I just think that we learn, we're evolving creatures. And every single person said one version of trust yourself or it's going to be okay. Is there anything else you want to leave, like a couple of like sound bites or pearls of wisdom that you didn't get a chance to say that are Dani-isms that you want to convey to the audience to leave them with before we say adieu?
It's funny. I will say to you, like, just as a chat, like, I do think, like, for so many people, and this is right up your alley. I know it is, right? The idea of like, let it be easy, like, just let it be easy. But I think the idea that I do think that for like so many people, kind of because I've done it too, right? Is the idea is that when we are doing like the simple day to day things, and it can be that easy. Doesn't necessarily mean that it feels easy every single day. Right. And then we introduce all the hard and the confusion.
Indeed. It's true. It's really true. Yeah, no, so I encourage everybody to check out cleananddelicious.com. Dani Spies, spelled Spies. Please look at the links on the podcast as well as the blog and get in touch with Dani. Her videos are incredible. If you like a recipe, 9 out of 10 times you can find her doing it on video, and it's super easy to follow. And again, it's not difficult to live a clean and healthy life if you surround yourself with the support systems. And I would venture to say that Dani can be that for you. And if you need more support, she's got a program that she can tell you more about. So thank you all for being here. Appreciate you joining in. So this is Dani Spies on clean, delicious, healthful eating, being, living. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to Possibilities with Monique DeMeo, where we unpack life as a female mover and shaker. If you like the show, please consider liking it, or better still, subscribing to it and leaving us a rating. It truly does help. Also, you can pick up my book, The 7 Secrets to Creating a Life You Love, a practical guide for women in leadership. You can find the book, other episodes of this podcast, and how to stay in touch at MoniqueDeMeo.com. DEMAIO. I look forward to seeing you again soon. With gratitude, Monique.